And we are live. Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Papiden, and this is Fermenting Opinions, the podcast and Google Hangout show in search of a more palatable political ferment. This is January 7th, 2020. Happy New Year's, everybody. We might be going to war with Iran. So, how's it going? That's how I'm leading into this thing. Tonight we have with us Chris. We'll call it Atheist Chris, Christian Chris, Satanic Drew, Evil RJ, and my glorious self, whom I have already introduced. And we're going to talk about the killing of the General Soleimani, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Did we just lose somebody? I don't know. Anyway, the killing of Soleimani, which happened on Friday, January 3rd, and whether or not we should have. I was going to say at the time of when I was setting all this up, the expected fallout from doing that, but we're kind of already at the fallout part. Like it's happening like as we speak.
Maybe Fallout isn't the word you want to use right now.
Well, puns abound, don't they? Um,
Thanks,
yeah,
Obama.
yeah. Thanks, Obama. This is all Obama's fault somehow. I'm certain if we dig deep enough. Um, Personally, I'm just going to start with the Soleimani thing. I would not defend his character. I wouldn't say that he did not have it coming. From what I understand, and admittedly, I'm one of these people that they talked about, like didn't know who he was last week, like, but now just understanding the basics of who he was and what his role is in orchestrating attacks and what have you. Um, Not a good guy. Like we get it. Also, the world is filled with not good guys that we can't strategically just off because we feel like it. And that's sort of where I'm at with this thing. It's like, yeah, bad dude, not going to, mourn his death kind of thing, not going to defend Iran. Iran are still bad actors. We kind of talked about this before we started with Drew there. Um, it's it's bad, but should we have done that? Were we way out of bounds, not just strategically, but maybe legally in doing that? Um, and that was going to be the first part of the conversation, but it pales in comparison to things are happening right now as we're speaking, as we're recording this. Um, Maybe ramping up to war with Iran. They have, within I think the last hour or so, had launched missile attacks against. I think they were Iraqi-owned military bases where U.S. troops were stationed. One of which was one of the bases that Trump had visited. I think last Christmas or something like that, and it was his first like war zone visit the troops kind of thing. So it's a symbolic gesture there. Um, According to them, it was a launching of quote tens of missiles um, as retaliation for the martyr Soleimani, yada yada yada. That part's not verbatim. Um, where are we at with this thing? Because I got real bad feelings that it's not going to stop here. Trump is supposed to have before we went on was supposed to be doing some kind of press conference kind of thing. Now I'm hearing that maybe that's not going to happen. Maybe he'll just tweet about it. I don't know. But what are the thoughts of y'all, gentlemen?
I think that sort of the beginning and the end of whether this was a good idea, this being the strike against Iranian General Soleimani, is that the reports are that the strike against Soleimani was hyperbolic, that it was a choice that was designed not to be a choice, only to make the other choices seem more palatable.
Hmm.
Uh, this is a traditional thing that the Pentagon does when presenting the commander in chief with um, options. It certainly has been since 9/11 to say, okay, we can do A, B, C, or D, where A, B, and C are all the recommended options. They fall within the range of things that one should do. And then D is something that is so outside of the norm and so ridiculous that the president goes, okay, well, we certainly can't do that. That is just not a thing that America can be seen to do on the international stage, and it makes A, B, and C seem more palatable.
I'm sorry, someone's phone's ringing. Who's the culprit?
Yeah, it's me. Hang on a minute. Hey, Wes, hang on just a minute.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, sorry. That's for everybody's
Tell
benefit.
Wes what's up. Tell Wes what's up.
What up, Wes?
So I think that knowing that, and those are the reports on Saturday, this is not a position that the U.S. was prepared to be in militarily. It's not something that is strategic. It's not something that is a good position to be in for us. I'm not sure that it's a great position for Iran to be in either. I don't think that generals would have presented the option to Trump if it was completely unvetted. I just think that it has escalated things to a degree that people were not prepared for. I think it's unfortunate that the generals that were involved in that discussion did not take the time or the gumption or whatever you want to call it to tell Trump this is not a real option. And the reports are that no one said that. But to say we presented this to you to show you why the other ones were more reasonable. So perhaps you should rethink this, and went ahead and did it.
Are you saying it's like a multiple choice test, and you see the one like obvious
obvious
elimination?
Yeah. It's the one you're supposed to cross out first. Now, if I was tutoring you and you picked that choice, I'd say, okay, well, David, that's the one you're specifically not supposed to pick, and here's why. Now let's talk about why the other three are better options and why we should choose one of those. It doesn't sound like that happened here. I think that the commander-in-chief has the option to make these sorts of decisions, but I do not think that in terms of strategy, where we are right now is where we would like to be.
Gotcha. No, I agree with that. Hey, Richard, you made it.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome.
Very cool. I'm glad that worked out. I don't know what the deal was there, but glad to have you join us.
Hello, Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Richard and Chris, do you know each other? And Chris, maybe all three of you know each other from other places. I don't know.
I know Richard from. I mean, I don't know him, but I know of him from the online.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Who's all here?
We have. Well, I don't know if you guys want to disclose the last names or not, but we have.
It's okay with me.
Well, okay. Well, Richard is he's been a guest on the podcast. I don't know, we had you on maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. You talked about tribalism, and you have a background in the military, and I think it can provide some interesting insight into some of this and what's going on. But yeah, both of Chris's I know, I think primarily from sort of like apologetics type pages, and you've probably encountered one or both of them in other places, and then Drew and RJ are FO people, and I'm from everywhere. So
Yeah.
so here we are discussing. I think the part that you've jumped in on. We're sort of talking about the over under of the drone strike against Soleimani, if I'm saying his name correctly, which I'm probably not. What are your thoughts on that? If I can just jump to you, and then we'll go back and get these other guys.
I can make an argument either way, but I can't say that for probably 20 years. And so I've been in the Marines, or I was in the Marines since the 90s, and then I went to DOD, and now I'm in Homeland Security. All that time in counterterrorism, I can say that for 20 years, the thinking was it would be great if he was dead. If there was just some way that he could somehow be dead without anybody attributing to how it happened, just him not be there, because he has the charisma and the expertise to get a lot of things done, and a lot of those things aren't in our interest. So certainly. I think for 20 years, the military has said, I would love for him to just not be here. But then probably every president in those 20 years has realized there's a personal risk in that, because Iran thinks of it personally. They're going to blame him as a person for the rest of his life. He could be 98 He probably won't ever be 98, but they're going to blame him personally for this. And I think he just kind of reacts by the gut. I think he just makes a quick gut reaction, and he heard that it was something that needed to be done, and other presidents hadn't done it, so he said, "Okay, I'll do it."
The target of opportunity.
So whether he got there through some agonizing risk analysis or whether it was just some gut thing, the thing is he did something that probably other presidents who had thought about it probably wouldn't have done. It's good that he's gone. I just think there's probably going to be a tremendous risk to diplomats and military overseas, and none of them were prepared for it. None of them knew that this was something going to happen, and they need probably more than days to prepare for what's coming. And that's not even considering what just happened a couple hours ago. I think that's just the beginning of what's going to happen. So if he had agonized over it and if he had prepared other people for it, that would have one opinion. But the fact that he probably just did it off of his gut makes me worry about his ability to critically think. And then that makes me worry about our future.
I hear you. Does one of the Chris's want to chime in here?
Oh,
I think
that was a very interesting take. Go ahead, other Chris.
Well, I've said from the beginning, I think we have to ask, what is the end game here? If we're going to do this and we're not willing to go all the way and really get rid of the governing regime in Iran, then all we're doing is empowering them to become a nuclear state. I don't see any positive come out of this. I mean, killing the general, yes. I mean, I'm not a fan at all, but getting rid of this bad guy is not a bad thing. I even said that about Iraq. Getting rid of Hussein was not a bad thing. We just didn't do what we needed to do afterwards to fill the vacuum that was there.
Yeah, regime changes. It's not a thing that often works out well. Anyway, go ahead.
This wasn't a regime change.
No, certainly.
Still.
But I was referring to Saddam.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Other Chris.
No, I just that was really fascinated with Richard's take on that. The stuff I've listened to a little bit, it's kind of like he was in Baghdad, really stirring up trouble and had some real dirty plans. Things were starting to escalate, and they had a quick shot at him. I don't know if that's fully accurate, though. I don't know.
I'll chime in real quick. That is accurate. I would just say that for 20 years we've had similar shots like that. And people were just scared to take it because they thought that the risks outweighed the benefit of having him killed. So exactly what you just said is what happened. But I just think general after general and president after president said, don't do it because it's going to bring personal risk to me. And that might outweigh whatever benefit it could bring because he's probably his martyrdom is going to be more of an inspiration now. And that's why I was saying military people have just kind of wished he would go away because he had such capabilities, but they just didn't want to take the shot. And so Trump, whether he's supernaturally brave beyond the cosmos or whether he's just too naive to know any better, he took the shot.
So it's either 40 chess or it's pigeon chess, basically. And there's really nothing in between. It is what it is. Drew?
Well, I think my position is somewhat similar to RJ's on this. I think it was a target. I do tend to think this was a target of opportunity, that it wasn't necessarily something that was planned or planned well with any sort of consideration of the potential, fallout of how that might how that might affect other pieces in play. And I honestly don't think they could have said it better than RJ or have these sort of in-depth assessments that Mr. Suttles has presented.
Gotcha.
I don't have background. What I do find interesting is how this fits within, I guess, the self-defense from imminent attacks category of action that would be permissible under UN Charter. If that runs afoul of that or not, I think it's probably stretching that definition to some degree. But to what extent, I think is hard to say with the information we have in front of us.
That's an interesting question that I've seen raised before, and I think I sort of hinted at it when we were starting. Is whether or not we did what we did with the airstrike, is that considered a political assassination? Is it considered, according to them, it was an act of terror? And they've since what designated the U.S. military a terrorist organization kind of thing, and that's part of their propaganda. That when they're attacking, I guess our soldiers at the Iraqi base, that they're firing on the terrorist forces now, and that's part of their propaganda. Neither here nor there, but where were we with that legally when we did that? Is this a hostile military? Was it that we're doing it as an act, essentially a military action? Was this a counterterrorism act on our part? Was this a political assassination?
I can probably speak to that.
Okay.
For 20 years, easily the IRGC has been like a terrorist arm of Iran, and I'll compare them really quick to Hezbollah. If anybody remembers back in the 80s, Hezbollah was behind the attack on the Marine barracks. So I wasn't in the Marines at that time. I was still a kid, but they attacked the Marine barracks, I think, in '83 and killed hundreds of Marines, but with a truck bomb. And back then, they were like the #1 terrorist organization. And we thought, these are going to be our enemies for life. But then they called up Reagan and said, hey, if you pull out your troops, you'll never hear from us again. And he did, and they did. They stopped being terrorists when he did what they said. Wow. And then I say they stopped being terrorists. Then they built up a big diplomatic arm where they tried to, present themselves as a legitimate national state. But that terrorist thing never went away. But they just kept it at bay. They keep it. Just like over here, there's still Hezbollah terrorists here in the U.S., but they mostly do like financing and trafficking. They don't do planning of destruction. So that's how it is with Iran. They have a legitimate-ish state diplomatic arm, and then they have a little terrorist group on the side. And the IRGC has been that terrorist group on the side for 20 years. And I think since 2007, we've said they're terrorists. And I think the State Department just last year made it official. They're an official terrorist group. So all they're doing is kind of riding around, creating crap, doing illegal stuff, and just kind of daring anybody to do anything about it. Which is why I was saying for like 20 years, people have just kind of wished he would go away because they knew if they attacked him, that the diplomatic state side of Iran would say, "What? We're a legitimate, peace-seeking, law-abiding state. Why did he kill one of our legitimate people?" Knowing full well that he's been doing terrorist.
Sure, yeah, that's. So, and I guess that's the thing. I get the nuance. I appreciate it. But I guess it's a question of Trump pulled the trigger on this guy. And so here we are now, right?
Right.
What?
And there's one interesting piece of this. So I have some personal connections in Lebanon, people that actually fled the civil war that have a lot of political connections there. And Hezbollah is the biggest armed faction in Lebanon, and they have a lot of power, but they have legitimized themselves almost like the mafia tried to legitimize themselves. So here they are threatening to retaliate. I'm curious if they're, are they like a ticking time bomb waiting to destabilize Lebanon in the interest of attacking Israel on behalf of Iran, or what? It just raised a lot of questions in my mind.
There's a lot of, not just in Hezbollah, but just around the Muslim world, to my understanding, that there is a lot of anger and unrest. I have a friend who lives in I won't get specific, but he lives in a Muslim majority country in Africa, and embassies have been warning, and he's an American citizen, and have been warning Americans, and maybe you want to leave, maybe you should be more careful, kind of thing. So I've been communicating with him, and he's got a good bit of concern about what's going on. He thinks he's still got better chances than coming back to the U.S. and living in Trump country, but that's just his gallows humor, I think. And I hope he's all right. But yeah, so like I mean, the world is a little bit pissed off right now. And another thing to the point of what Richard was saying is, in terms of the fallout, again, no pun intended, maybe pun intended, of killing this guy and making a martyr of him. That it's my understanding that a couple of weeks prior to this, there were protests in Iran that there was a lot of discontent with the leadership, and that's kind of evaporated now. And now it's outraged against us, and it's been sort of unifying. At the head of a foreign enemy. I think it's
hard to gauge that, though. I think it's absolutely hard to gauge that, though, because
okay,
I don't think they have the same sort of freedoms to protest like we do here in the States, and I think that they mobilized a great number of people to at least present a unified front. That doesn't necessarily mean that they shared that same view, but I think they had the wherewithal and the ability as a regime to, in some sense, force compliance with that presentation.
Sure, certainly.
It's difficult. I think it's absolutely difficult to prove one way or another that's the case.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I get the sense that in Iran, there's probably a large group who see this killing and it motivates them in a nationalistic way, but there's probably also a smaller group that's really pissed off that Iran is suffering because of their actions and sanctions. I heard also that this would unite different, Shia groups within Iraq, these PMUs, these mobilization units that Iran has backed. They were sort of fragmented. They think maybe this might unite them, which is not a good thing, but, again, hard to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so here we are. I think is there any other to back up a little bit? Anybody else have a take other than Richard's with regards to the drone strike on Soleimani and sort of its category and legality and so forth?
I think that right now we're watching that play out. If we had intelligence that Soleimani was going to plan or was involved in a future strike against American forces or American citizens, then there's a good argument for the drone strike.
Broadcast that, though? Would they go out there and say this is what we know, this is what we're actually doing, or would they just do it and then?
No. That doesn't matter, Drew. What I'm saying is we apparently have intelligence that suggested that. Right now, House and Senate Democrats are calling for that intelligence. If that intelligence existed, and I don't see any reason to question that the intelligence existed, I trust the intelligence community, then the strike itself is probably justified under international law. So it's tough to say that there wasn't a reason for American forces to strike, but there is or at least there wasn't a legitimate reason. How about that?
Right.
There may have been a legitimate reason to strike, but as Richard has outlined, for at least 20 years, there has been a strategic reason to strike against Soleimani. Is it the best call at the time? That seems very unlikely given what we know right now. It seems like Trump was presented with several options, as well as striking Soleimani, which was well outside the norm. He chose that, and no one corrected him.
Yeah.
Or he didn't listen.
Yeah, that too.
Well, like he says, like he's always said, even he said during the campaign, is I know better than the generals, and he believes that.
President Goodbrain. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he may believe that, but I mean, that is a really odd stance to take. when we're talking about international politics, as you probably know better than we do, Richard.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I put a lot of confidence in subject matter experts, that they might know more about their subject, than I do.
Right.
For example,
Yeah.
if I can present not a real strong, but a little bit of a counter argument, obviously, to my take and my understanding is, for the last 20 years, it was always going to be better to have this guy off the board than still on the board, playing, right?
But hopefully, like they wanted it to be like attributed to something else, or he had cancer or something like that.
Right. Yeah. He had the mysterious, uranium-induced cancer, kind of thing. Like, in any way, for him to be gone is better. There was always a reason for it. There was always a justification for it for a long time now. He's a bad actor, that he's, orchestrated and sort of mastermind, to my understanding, these kinds of attacks for 20 plus years, right? Bad dude. No one's going to miss him. At least no one on our side is going to miss him. But was it ever the smartest thing to do? It was not the right strategic play. And the idea that now that he's gone, it's better, just on that score, maybe in the long term, but in the short term, both we're dealing with this immediate fallout and whether or not we're ramping up for war with Iran. And there's also the fact that, that he has inspired others. Whatever plans were already in the works, to my mind, it doesn't make them less likely that those people are going to go out and commit those attacks, rather than more likely that, this is, they shot missiles at Iraqi bases for the martyr. So he's been martyred now. Other people want to go out and martyr themselves in his name, in his honor. Whatever was already being started, it, to my understanding, is more likely to go down now than it was before we killed him with a drone. So
I wonder though.
Go ahead.
So it's floating around Twitter that Tehran actually told us they were going to do this, and that's why there were no U.S. casualties. I wonder, hyperbolically and hypothetically speaking, I wonder, rather than if we go into war, if this is going to give Trump some cover to get the hell out of Iraq permanently.
Well, that's exactly what Iran wants. They want the U.S. out, and Trump wanted to go out until Iran, or until Iraq voted us out officially, and until that letter accidentally got released that we were getting out. Trump wanted to get out, but now that it looked like somebody was forcing us out, now Trump doesn't want to get out. At least not yet.
Because
they don't want
next week.
They don't want to make it look like we were kicked out by Iraq. But yeah, he definitely wants out. I bet you Trump didn't think about any of this.
Probably not.
I honestly think he was given a choice of options, and somebody probably mentioned that the option to kill him had been on the table for 20 years and no president had ever taken it before, and that triggered something in him to think, well, I can do it. And then there's people who just weren't prepared for that, and our military and our diplomats are among them, and our national security staff are among them. And then we'll probably, I'll tell you this: everybody who was making plans and long-term strategies started over today.
Yeah, I hear you. So Chris H, is there? You have thoughts?
Yeah, I forgot. I didn't see who just said it, but someone just said a thought. I didn't see it on Twitter or anywhere, but as I was logging on, I was thinking about it. I was like, what are the odds that Trump and Iran are already communicating and be like, okay, we both wanted Soleimani out for whatever reasons, and then we're going to fire some rockets to appease our fundamentalists over here, and blah 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 bullshit. And it's like, okay, and then good game plan break, and then I don't know, maybe not, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I guess you're saying that Iran, like the Iranian government, would want Soleimani out,
I don't know. That could totally be false. I'm just saying I've heard a little chatter here and there that seems like that. he was not so loved as some of the media is reporting.
Well, it's who. I guess if I can put it this way, is whether or not he was less loved than he looks like he is right now. When you kill somebody like that and make a big martyr of them, they're sure gonna look loved. The reaction will be, like if somebody, somebody killed like George Bush or something like that, in a terrorist attack. Whether or not I was a Democrat that didn't vote for him, I'd still be up in arms. It was like the whole 9/11 thing. We forgot at that time, whatever our differences were, and we all united. We were. I can't think of a time in my life where we were ever more united as a country than right after 9/11. That's just the nature of the beast. So maybe, but I have no evidence, no information to go off of to suggest that Soleimani was an undesirable to anybody, where they would have green lighted a U.S. drone strike against him. That seems like a lot.
Unless he became a threat to the Ayatollah. Supposedly he was the number 2 or number 3 guy, whether informally or formally.
Right.
If he had gone rogue in Iraq, or he was some kind of a threat to the regime, maybe. But
was there any real concern about that? I mean, you could say hypothetically, but do we know?
I mean, I don't know. I'm with you. I didn't even know who the guy was 2 weeks ago. Which,
yeah, that's I admitted the same at the beginning of this thing. Didn't know who he was. Learned a little bit about him. Not going to miss him, but but here we are. Has anybody heard? I know you guys are all on this thing. I'm sorry. If you guys who can't see this, Drew is just trolling me in the comments on this, and it's brilliant. He's called my head bullshit and told me to drink.
It's so hard.
It's really hard to focus because he knows how easily distractible I am. But before we started, there were reports of a press conference of some sort from the White House, and now maybe that's not happening. I don't know if you guys are looking at other screens or anything else like that right now. If you've heard anything, an update would be great.
I just heard it wasn't going to happen.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Is that so? We are sticking to Twitter then? Is that
Right. Everything that comes out is going to come on his Twitter.
that's
Because
Yeah.
whatever people say, whatever experts within his administration say, it's going to be undone by whatever he tweets.
Mm-hmm.
They probably ran out of Sharpies halfway through writing out his speech.
Yeah.
That's really
Right, the
Probably
hurricane was going to hit
140
Iran, and so he just
Yeah.
drew the little Sharpie.
Yeah.
He's like, "Look, this is just a hurricane.
See,
This isn't even on me."
See, those missiles hit
heard-
Iraqi bases. They weren't American.
I heard Hunter Biden was in Iran. I don't know. Hey, guys, I got to bow out. My son will be home soon. I got to get him to bed, but I
Okay.
enjoyed getting to
Yeah,
Chime in
no,
for
it was
once.
good catching up with you with all the technical bugs like we've had in the past.
Yeah.
But no, this is cool. We got to do it again.
All right, y'all have a good night.
All right.
Adios.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really want to know is, what did Soleimani have on Clinton? That's what I really want to know. I need that shirt. Soleimani didn't kill himself, right? Obviously, he didn't. But anyway.
I can tell you that, like, if there is a war and it gets out of hand and it's just crazy, then Trump will say that Clinton did it, and I swear 20 million people will be like, "Yep, Clinton did it."
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
It's. Yeah. I mean, I don't know where we are with this thing. I saw the rocket attack. I heard. We've heard Trump's threats via tweet. Without. God, Drew, you gotta stop, man. You really gotta stop. Can I block that somehow? I'm seriously trying to talk, and it's just no good. I want to show messages. Look at that. Can I hide messages? I'm going. This is the only reason why he even comes on here, is to give me a hard time.
It's certainly not the content that I give out.
No, you don't give any quality content. You're good with the memes. You are. You're fantastic with memes. But anyway, what the hell was I saying? Yeah, so Trump's threats via Twitter. That he said if they do anything, wrong, that it's going to be very, very bad for them. There's going to be consequences. yes, he's also good at empty threats, but if he did this essentially without, needing a threat to have to make good on, what would he do to not lose face? Because as Richard, as you were pointing out before, we were all ready to get out of Iraq. We were all ready to get out of everywhere until we were told we had to leave, and now it's no, I'm not going to leave because you've said so, because we're in the third grade. And I mean, seriously, that's what it is. He doesn't want to look weak.
Yes.
He's doing his Reagan impression.
A very poor impression. And I was not a fan of Reagan's, but seriously, the guy had a lot more, I don't know.
But you said a little bit earlier, David, like Iran has a history of two things in recent history. One, flipping their whole country over being fan fundamentalism, which, like you said, is now a threat, if this guy becomes martyr.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have a history of, oh shit, well, I've lost my whole train of thought. Never mind.
Okay. Well, the 1 points are good enough, and I agree with that, of course. I don't know if I want to get turning this into a religious discussion, so maybe I'll just put a pin in it there.
Oh, I remember that they have a history of releasing the hostages. That's what I was going to say, but I want to put an asterisk on that because I have more questions on that. But you know what I'm saying? Like that. Like Reagan gets elected, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're willing to play ball, and they release them after 2 years of being held.
Sure. Yeah, and that's
I just want to point out here, since we're talking about the hostages, that Trump's tweets about attacking cultural sites and making quasi-religious references to the 52 hostages held in 1979 are just abhorrent. And it shows how far we've gone from the norms of political conversation in this country, that the president of the United States is not just saying these things. This is not coming out from a secondary source, a spokesperson. The president is tweeting these things out, and everyone just kind of collectively shrugs, like, "Oh yeah, that's the guy that we elected to be president."
We swore in 2016 we wouldn't let it be normal.
Right, and it is normal. So normalized now. We're just oh sure. He said he would attack cultural sites twice. He said it. The Pentagon has walked that back. Kellyanne Conway has tried to walk that back, but he said it. He also, like I said, pointed out that there were 52 hostages taken in 1979, and that we're going to target 52 sites in Iran based on that. That is just bonkers, right?
It's
you attack in proportion. He said disproportionate, but you say we're going to make a proportionate response to what this other country has done. These are international relations that have gone on before America even existed. I mean, these are things that go back centuries.
There is an appeal also, and again, this fine. I am going to talk a little bit about religion. To the evangelical base, it's an appeal to the apocalyptic melodrama that is this, this Middle East, power struggle, right? That, the use of symbols like that, like the 52 hostages. I'm going to attack 52 sites because that's. You read shit like that in the Bible, right? That there's segments of 4s and 3s and 7s,
right? Or how many times did you drive the arrow into the ground?
Right? Yeah, all of that stuff. And it's the love of using numbers and symbols and things like that. That's going to have an appeal to people who sees Muslims as the bad guy, just generally speaking. And Iran are bad actors, so they make it real easy. The government, that is. I don't have anything against the Iranian people. Same with the Saudis and so on and so forth. But they're going to love that, so that's going to win the support of his base. Because honestly, I can't imagine, and maybe someone else can speak to this better than me. I can't imagine there's much of a will to go to war with Iran right now in the American people. I can't imagine that we're chomping at the bit for this. Certainly not collectively. In fact, so much to the point where Democrats are being accused of actually defending Iran at this point for not being more gung-ho about the assassination or target killing, whatever you want to call it, of Soleimani. Um, because we're not, it's not like 9/11 where we're all unified. Yeah, let's go to Iraq, let's go do whatever, and go get the guys that got us. Let's go to Afghanistan, let's get them, all that stuff. Like none of that's here now. Like none of it. So what can you
Well,
do?
yeah,
But
say
gin
none of
up
it's
your
here.
base as much as possible. Because
Yeah,
that's what's going to carry you through the next election, really.
right. You say none of it's here, but I wonder how correct that statement is if uh, actual troops get involved here, if there is a protracted attack against Iran, if this does turn into a war, what does that look like? Because I agree with you
I think it
today.
looks like a naval engagement.
Well, yeah, but I mean, 2 weeks ago nobody was asking for this, but 2 weeks from now, I mean, there is a lot of run to the flag.
But doesn't
What?
Iran know that?
Well,
I
yeah,
guess that's
Iran
my
knows that,
thing.
but
That's why.
Iran doesn't care about our elections at the end of the day.
But
We
they might.
do.
But they will care about our political will to go to war with them,
Well,
right?
sure, but our political will to go to war with them is somewhat up in the air because if we were to go to war with them, just as a hypothetical,
Uh huh.
there's a very good chance that a good number of Americans will just rah rah to the flag. And so, if that happens, regardless of the interests of Iran, it may be in the short term interest of Trump because we have an election coming up in
And also an
10 ish
impeachment
months.
that's going on, kind of right now, sort of.
Well, sure, yeah, the impeachment too, but right now it looks like the Republicans are circling the wagons based on um, the news coming down today. It looks like um, uh, the senators that were sort of wavering are at least going forward right now, saying no, let's not have witnesses at least until the House
Right
managers
after
present their
the,
case.
I saw that. Yeah.
So, as far as that being an obfuscation to impeachment, it's not all that useful. But if we get into a protracted war with Iran, and any war with Iran will be protracted, I can't imagine it won't be, um, given the international players that would also be involved. I think that it might be in Trump's interest. Now, I'm not saying this is a wag the dog situation. I don't think that's the only motivation here. I don't know that it was thought through that well, actually. But I think that there is a danger there that certain American people might say, okay, well, if our boys are going overseas, we need to support the commander in chief.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people will say that. I think it's going to be somewhat curtailed from previous engagements that we've seen. Okay, because there is sort of a baseline rah rah rally to the flag kind of thing, as you said, but like we have to have the right motivation um, beyond people who know the military, have military family, or are in the military themselves. If you're trying to get to the general populace outside of that, you have to have public support for the war. I don't think you would unless they did something to bloody our nose in some kind of major way that would be galvanizing to the will, and it's just not going to happen because I don't think Iran is that stupid. I think the rocket attack that they engaged in tonight is an indication of that. I think Chris had said something to the effect of, "It's what I'm going to do." Okay, I'm going to do that. So now I can't see the text box at all, Drew. It's completely obscured because he keeps typing, "Hey David, hey David." And I'm trying. He's such a bastard.
Wow, I can't believe you just said that. Are you allowed to let him say that? I'm just kidding.
But anyway, so I think Chris or somebody was saying earlier that they kind of let us know that this attack was going to happen, and we were able to move our soldiers out of where they could have been directly hit or were very likely to be, or something like that. If that's the case, they're trying to make it look like they retaliated, escalate to de-escalate kind of thing. and not have a war. It's just a question of whether or not Trump himself has the intelligence to interpret it for that and not escalate further, unless he's really looking to. But if it's just Trump leading us into military action, and I know he has to get congressional approval and all that stuff, but in the short term, strikes can happen that can escalate this thing. I think it will gain enough of momentum on its own. I think he's capable of that, but I don't think in that scenario he would have much in terms of public support for it. I don't think we want to go war with Iran.
I don't think that the escalate to de-escalate idea has any merit, especially given that Iran has made missile strikes tonight, rocket strikes.
Rocket missiles, whatever, yeah.
If I punch you in the face, assuming that you won't come back at me because I'm too tough, if you come and punch me in the face back, it doesn't matter that I might grind you into the pavement. My initial idea that I could escalate the situation in order to de-escalate it, like I'll hit you and it'll just be over, was wrong. And I think that given that Iran tonight has shot off rockets at Iraqi bases where U.S. forces are housed, suggests that is not a real option here. That it wasn't just hit Iran in the nose and they'll, quiet down and think about their real position in the world.
So tell me what you think. I'll let Chris go, but then tell me what you think is really going to happen moving forward. And we're just in a prediction game right now, so only Drew will call you on it. And it's too bad I can't read his messages.
What are your thoughts? I want to hear Richard's thoughts on if Trump makes a move back now and blows up some of their bases hardcore, sends missiles over. Does Iran back down? Do they counter back? Does this escalate? Does Russia and China, are they looming in the background? What are your thoughts?
I think the main Iran guy, their version of the Ayatollah, the main dude, I think he's crazy, and he's willing to go down in a bang. But I hope that there's people underneath him that would shoot him and keep that from happening. But I don't know. But if Trump tries to out stupid the Ayatollah, then we're all screwed. And then I don't know if China and Russia will change their game and say we need to do something. And I don't know what they can do. But I'm worried that when we elected Trump, he wasn't like a zealot the same way Saddam Hussein is kind of or was, or Ayatollah. He wasn't that kind of crazy. He's a different kind of crazy. And I worried that we would get here where he would try and outman, because that's the way they think. Whether you're Trump's kind of crazy or you're the Iran Ayatollah is kind of crazy, you have the same strategy when it comes to getting into a man-up fight with somebody else. You're like, well, I'm just going to keep stepping up automatically without thinking about it. I'm just going to keep escalating it and hope that works out for me. And I worried that we would get here. And if we are going to do that, then we're in trouble because Trump won't back down. And then I'm hoping that Iran has methods in place to keep the other guy from doing that. But I don't know.
Damn. Would warfare with Iran even be much of a ground invasion, or would it just be launching missile after missile type bombing raid?
To my understanding, and again, Richard is probably more knowledgeable than I am, that Iran has one of the largest arsenals in the region, I guess other than us. So if it becomes like a fully hot shooting war between us and Iran, there's going to be a large exchange of ordnance. I see that getting very ugly from just my own personal limited analysis. But again, I'm going to kick that back to Richard.
Like I don't think that Iran has the capability of overseas nuclear attacks, although they might. I just don't think they do. But they could kill many millions of people in surrounding areas, to include Europe if they wanted to. In Israel, that they would probably just erase Israel on their way out. If it looked like they were just going to fire everything at once, and our only move was to evaporate them, they would probably evaporate Israel first. So historic, life-changing, global, horror, no matter what. Because when it comes to wait, this is getting crazy. What should I do? Iran doesn't have that, at least not at the top. And now I wonder if we have that, which is a weird thing because I used to think that we kind of set the standard for that. But right now we don't have that.
That's wild. I think, one of the things that has been sort of a recurring idea in my head regarding the Trump presidency is that I was thankful that we were never facing any major, to the point of, existential crisis kind of thing, or any major global conflict was really, that we were in a situation where it could lead that way with poor leadership. And here we are with probably, the least qualified person. You could pick someone off the street. I would probably have more confidence in the way they would handle the situation because they were at least not so full of themselves to think that they knew better than everybody else around them.
Right.
And refuse to listen to what the experts knew. But here we are with someone who's, and you were saying before, he's not like, the Ayatollah. He's not some, ideological zealot, right? His only loyalty is really to himself, but he's a massive narcissist, and he wants to look tough. He wants to be remembered for being tough. And he could very well take us over the brink for that. I don't know if he will. I don't know if there's any other adults in the room left at this point that can, maybe take his finger off the button, so to speak. Not that button, the other button. But but here we are, drink up.
I would hope that if Trump just said start doing something crazy, I would hope there's people that could remove him and that Mike Pence would take over, because I think Mike Pence would handle this just fine. I think he's a dominionist and he has some crazy ideological concepts, but he's not so insane that he'll just kill us all. So I think he would handle this just fine. But with him as vice president, he all he can do is watch.
I tend to agree with that, but I do worry about the idea that in this particular with the Soleimani attack, that it seems like this was an outlier option that was presented to Trump, and that no one stepped in and explained that to him.
Well, and that brings me into something else. Is that for the past year or so, there's no one to do that anymore. It used to be his chief of staff that's now out. I forget his name now, but the former military general guy who was his
Mattis?
Yeah, no, not Mattis.
Bolton?
No, Mattis, not Bolton. He was the chief of staff, and I know who you're talking about, and I forgot his name too.
Yeah, he was chief of staff, and he got into that one gaffe where he was talking about the black congresswoman, and he accused her of some things because she had released Trump's transcript when he was talking to a war widow, and kind of exposed how dumb Trump is. This general got up there and gave like a speech and accused her of some stuff. What is his name? Anyway, they say that once that guy left, there was nobody in the room to challenge Trump. So, and now with Mattis gone, I'm gonna type in Trump, former chief of staff.
Look it up, because I was about to. But go ahead.
There's no adult in the room. There's people who are panicking. Like I'm sure Kelly Conway is absolutely panicking, but she won't stop him. She won't put her she won't put her face in his and say, "Hey, idiot."
Kelly.
Kelly.
John Kelly.
John Kelly. That's it.
Yep.
So John Kelly had the ability to kind of steer him in the right way, but he's gone, and so now there's not anybody to do that, and so we're all just going off of his whims, and then people who are in the room with him are just gonna make it happen as he says it. And so we're all kind of victim to his gut right now.
And
Has anyone else noticed that Mick Mulvaney looks like the Nazi guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark? Is it kind of
If you look at my Facebook page, I was doing that all the time. I would do a meme with the guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I would do like a quote from Mick Mulvaney. Ever since he changed into those glasses, which he did, it was the same time that Trump said shithole countries, which was either January of 18 or 17, 2017 or 2018.
Mhm.
That was when Mick Mulvaney changed into those wire glasses, and he pretty much shaved his hair, and he came out and he was giving a speech. And I'm like, dude, that is the guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I've been using that meme. Whenever he speaks, I use that meme.
That's
Delightful.
hilarious.
Uncanny likeness.
Ugh.
You're welcome. I was able to derail you there too.
Yeah, good job, Drew. Thank you. You're vying to be more useless than James, and you're succeeding. Thank you. But James, you could not join us because he. What lie do we want to tell about James tonight?
Yeah, now that he's not here, let's make
Now that he's
fun.
not here, every time he misses one of these, we usually end up making up a lie about what he's really doing instead. You know,
Okay,
like he's been canvassing for Jill Stein or making up fake news. That actually wasn't a lie once, but
Restrooms for his law practice.
he was doing what now?
Canvassing public restrooms for his future law practice.
Very nice, very nice. That
Let's
seems,
spread that around.
yeah, absolutely. It'll be good for his career. I like that. Yeah. So, where do we want to go from here? Do we have other thoughts? Hey, only a month away from the Iowa caucuses, guys. I think there's another debate coming up in like a week. I know we're all as excited as I am to cover that.
You know something though? Those are
Running
wonderful
gag.
opportunities.
I've stopped watching the debates, the primary debates, because I'm just sick of it.
They are wonderful opportunities to hate on your candidate of choice.
I don't
in
have.
real
I still
time.
don't have a candidate of choice.
No. I'm talking about hating them in real time.
Oh.
I'm not talking about actually following or caring about them. I'm saying
Um,
it gives you an opportunity to sling, hate at them in real time.
in real time.
Uh,
That's an important caveat. Yeah.
I mean, I'm all about slinging Judy's. I don't know about that hate though.
I'll say that when it looked like Trump was going to get the nomination, I thought Democrats would just unite and they would drop the Bernie versus Hillary. All that anger and bitterness would just go away, and like moderates would come out of the woodwork, and there would be like 120 million votes against Trump. Like people would say, "I've never voted, but just to make sure we don't do this, I hiked hundreds of miles to come vote," and which did not happen. Not a damn thing was done about it.
No, because they figured everyone thought enough other people would hold their nose and vote for Hillary, so they didn't have to be the ones to do it. I know that. I was one of those people. In Tennessee, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, but I was still one of those people. Mea culpa.
And I would have thought that, but here it comes 2020, and I don't know that we're going to get any more votes. Honestly, Hillary, I think she got 63 or 65 million, I forget,
65.
but she's near what Obama got in 2008. I don't know that the Democratic candidate, whoever it is, I don't know that they're going to get any more than Obama got in 2008. Honestly, I don't think they're going to do anything about it.
Obama 8 or 12 numbers would assure victory pretty easily for whatever the Democratic nominee is. But I don't think the enthusiasm is there. I think partially because, and someone refresh my memory, were there this many Democratic primary debates? Did the primaries run this long with this many candidates in recent history? That it seems anomalous to me. That you've got people come out of the woodwork to run for. You got Bloomberg who comes in months after everybody else, just as a monopoly man with bags of money thrown everywhere. It's a bad look, first of all, for Democrats. Maybe it shouldn't be. That's a meta argument, but it is. That somebody can just show up just because they got lots of money. That's kind of what one of the things that Democrats tend to not like about Republicans, that they're these rich people that control the political process because they have all the money. That is a trope I see anyway. And even though it can be almost as true in many cases with regards to Democrats. That's still the trope. That's still the perception. Take it or
Right.
leave it. So outside of centrists who are just okay with that, you're going to lose everybody else in the Democratic base. People like that. Whoever the candidate is, you're only catching a segment, right? Because
Right.
none of them have enough of a broad appeal because there's too much ideological diversity within the party. And it's growing more concerning by the day.
Yeah, I just honestly thought so in 2016 when I thought that was going to happen, it didn't happen. Then I said, okay, well now we've learned our lesson, but we
No.
saw, and now the way our primary is, whoever wins, there's going to be 30 or 40 million Democrats who are so upset that they are either going to sit it out or vote for Trump or or vote for some independent candidate because they're so driven by their person that they refuse to unite against Trump. And I thought, if there's any lesson that we should have learned, is don't do that. But it looks like that's what we're going to do. I hope there's a long time between now and November, but I hope that we've learned that lesson. Yeah.
I tend to think that the unifying aspect of Trump's presidency in the Democratic base and wider diaspora is stronger than you think.
I hope
But I agree with you. It's not proven. If Hillary would have held on to the black vote in Michigan and Wisconsin, at least, she would have won those two states. Now, Pennsylvania is a bit of a different beast, but we're still talking about 75,000 votes over 3 states.
Right.
It was an incredibly close election. It's difficult to imagine a president in a worse spot for re-election than Trump is right now, barring an actual economic collapse or some sort of losing war, which is very difficult to envision.
Yeah.
So right now things look good for Democrats, but even if they do look good for getting Trump out of office, there's still only probably about a 25% chance that the Democrats take the Senate back.
Right.
Amy McGrath is probably maybe 1 in 5 to beat Mitch McConnell, and that might be a little bit
it's
optimistic.
A long shot. I've heard from people in our group in FO that just how weak of a candidate she would be pretty much in any race, and she's going up against McConnell. And
well, I mean, I think
McGrath. I'm like, but she's not going to win. So,
well, I mean, I don't think it's on Amy McGrath. I think that he's the majority leader of the Senate. He's probably going to win when he's being elected, when he's up for election every 6 years. But I do think that she's again 20%, 1 out of 5 may be optimistic. But it's a real chance. I mean, I've lost poker hands that were important to me that were less likely than that. So,
Yeah, I hear. Go ahead.
If this whole Iran thing fizzles out soon and it doesn't lead to nothing, this is a victory for Trump, in my opinion, that he'll be able to hark on in the election and the main debates.
When this first happened, my initial thought was he probably could not stand that Obama could always say that he got bin Laden, right? That happened under his watch. He wanted his guy that he could point to say, this is the feather in my cap. I got this guy. Now you can't hold that over me, Obama, kind of thing. Because I think he's on that intellectual level, or the level of maturity that he has something to equate it to now, that he can say he got Soleimani, or Soleimani, or however the hell you say it. That's what I think it was, perhaps initially. That again, here are my menu items of things I can do. This seems the most extreme. No one's really telling me not to because all the adults are out of the room. And once I do it, now I've got my bin Laden. And I've seen that in right-wing memes, not quite that on the nose, but it's indicating very much the same thing, because we have the comparison between Benghazi and the recent attacks and the way that we responded to this one with a lot faster and with a lot more force than the Benghazi fiasco. So there's a comparison there. And now we have this, and it's basically taking ammo out of the left's gun and putting it in the right's. Look at our scorecard kind of thing. Chris, do you agree with that?
Well, yeah. I didn't know if Richard had something to add, but quickly I'll add like some of the stuff I was hearing. Like Tim Pool was doing a breakdown, and a few others. Of course, Ben Shapiro did his spiel. Unlike a lot of times where you have disgruntled citizens throwing rocks at embassy guards or something like that, this time you had organized small militias being formed, starting to get backing, and then getting rockets. And then Trump did. He sent in the troops fast and got the diplomats or whatever you call it out of there. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Tell me if I'm wrong on that.
Richard, thoughts?
I was when you said thoughts, I was going to mention something earlier about Democrats and Republicans. So I missed what he said. What did he just say?
Chris, can you kind of?
Yeah, quick rundown. Like I said, I was hearing reports that this was like, I guess Soleimani was arming some small militias here, and instead of just throwing rocks like we see a lot of times, all of a sudden they're pulling out guns, small rocket fire, things of that nature, and it's starting to really escalate. They're setting fire, they're blowing up cars and other vehicles in the streets. They're trying to really turn it into a riot and a Benghazi type thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of stuff that Soleimani's been doing for 20 years. It is getting small pockets of people inspired to do something like Benghazi. Like I wouldn't be surprised if one day they say, Soleimani was the one who got those guys in Benghazi to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of thing is what happened, because that's the kind of stuff he's been doing for 20 years, and why we kind of saw him as a terrorist, and why all these military guys wanted him gone, but without the attribution against us, so that the legitimate side of Iran can't step up and claim to be a victim, which is what happened. They wanted him gone, but not like this. But yeah, he's been making these little terrorist groups, and there's people here in the U.S. in Hezbollah and who support Iran who would start doing that here if we got into a real nail biter with Iran and Hezbollah. There's groups here that would stop doing their financing and trafficking and starting riots and pulling out guns and shooting places here if it came to that.
That sounds delightful.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's no bueno. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't.
Several times this week, I've started to type comments on different threads about this back and forth. It's like, what is the big issue? What was this dude doing over near Baghdad in the first place? But then I don't even send it because it's like the comeback's going to be, what's America doing there? So it's like, yeah. But it's almost like that's part of our country at this point.
Yeah, certain. But well, it's just if the argument is perceived as coming from a certain viewpoint, there is a here we go tribalistic sort of reaction, of some kind of counterpoint, which is why we always end up playing the whataboutism game. And it's we've all been there at this point extensively on this show and elsewhere. But you're right. I mean, I think at least amongst the panelists here, including Drew, who's just a troll, that, he was probably up to something. I do trust our intelligence assessments. There was good reason for a long time, according to Richard, who I also trust, to get rid of this guy. But that doesn't mean it's a good idea to do it right now like we did it. That's really, I don't know if you could put it in, more simple terms than that kind of thing. But it gets so obfuscated and strung out in these arguments when someone pushes back against one that we should. All of a sudden now we're defending Iran, or we're defending Soleimani, or we're all of a sudden now we're doubting our intelligence community or what have you. Like, no, none of that. like bad guy had it coming. Maybe this was a bad move though. Like that's the crux of it.
Right. And
Everyone that seems to be losing apparently, at least in social media discourse.
Yeah, and David, I think that's true, and I think that's where I felt a lot of confusion when people started reacting to the initial strike, trying to argue that it was somehow illegitimate or, illegal under international law. Those things may be true in the end. Like, we may find that to be the case after we do an investigation, after people testify, things like that. But on the face of it, yeah, I mean, sure, you could go ahead and do this. I thought that, again, the first thing that I said here, the thing that really made up my mind was learning that this option was given to Trump to make the other options seem more palatable. Like, this was supposed to be the extreme hyperbole that made all of the right answers look like, oh yeah, I'll choose one of those in this narrow range.
But you see, Trump has never been about a more palatable political ferment, unlike some of us. Yes, I had to drop that. He's the guy who does the other thing.
What you did there.
Yeah, thank you. This is a shameless self-promotion right there. I don't care. But yeah, he's the reason.
Bad, and you should feel bad.
You liked it. The fact that you felt like you had to say something means you enjoyed it a little bit. But yeah, he's the reason that we exist doing this, in large part anyway, and a lot of things that led up to him, really, but he was never going to be the most reasonable voice in the room. That's why we're about encouraging more reasonable voices. But again, RJ, I agree with that assessment that was the one you're supposed to cross off immediately when you're taking the multiple choice test, and he picked it and he's defending it. Even though he's wrong.
Well, right, but no one else helped him cross it off.
There's nobody left.
There's nobody left. So, like, if he at this point, I think we're at the point where, unless he does something that, like, Secret Service says, I need to drag this man out of the room, unless something like that, we're probably just at his whim until something else happens.
Oh, Richard, I agree with you from a practical standpoint. I think that that's realistic. I'm just saying, generals sat around a table with this man, presented him an option that they meant to be not an option, and then allowed him to pick it without apparently any significant pushback. And that's a problem.
It's a problem. The generals, looks like the generals, and certainly the Secretary of Defense are not even going to try and pull him back right now, and that's scary.
Well, I mean, part of it is the people in those positions, right? That if I don't think there ever was an A team, and the B team is all left at this point. The administration,
right?
With the exception of Mattis, I'll say I do still like. James Mattis, but with the exception of him, it was B team, and they went away, and now it's like varsity league, or now they're playing in the pros, and they don't know what the fuck to do with themselves because they don't have the experience to know how to handle these situations in a way that doesn't lead to catastrophe.
Well, yeah,
and they're just hanging on and hoping it's okay because they thought this would be good for their careers.
I disagree with that, David.
Okay,
I think that the way that you're saying it is that the professionals gave way to the collegians, which gave way to the varsity team. At least the varsity team was trained to do the things that the collegians and the pros would eventually do, right? They might not be good at it yet. Like the team that is in place now is like what you make, when you have a cheap piece of furniture and it's not made out of wood. It's like made out of that pressed. Yeah, well, no, yeah, it's that pressed wood, right?
Yeah, the particle board.
Particle board. The IKEA furniture of cabinets.
Exactly. You take all of the
my house.
You do much better work than that, Chris. I've seen your work.
Dude, I'm sorry. I was, and
I know you're making a joke.
I had to hurry and unmute.
No, that was good. That was good. You take the like awful, the things that no one would have ever allowed near the varsity team, and you press them together into this pulp, right? That is the main part of what is making up the cabinet and the immediate advisors of Trump right now. And I think that's where people are getting scared.
Yeah. I mean, you did just describe Drew's physical appearance. I
So
want you
you're-
to know that.
So you're saying
was
they
rough.
should do well in Sweden?
No, they make better shit. Oh, he's just qualified people. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, IKEA furniture. I've got IKEA furniture that's better than that, but you know, it is a little bit cheaper. But anyway, I don't want to play in that metaphor too long, because you know we've been at this
As
about an hour.
Haley showed up, she would expound upon the merits of IKEA because it's Swedish.
Right, yeah, and environmentally friendly, and it's got all the funny names that you love. And I think we're supposed to be getting one in, you won't know where this is, but Mount Pleasant, Tennessee, which
Hey,
is
guess
like
what?
nowhere of nowhere,
Guess
but
what,
not
David?
far from where I work. And I'm like, why there? But we're supposed to be getting one, so I'm a little
Guess
happy
what,
about that
David?
because I don't care what you think, Drew. It's okay.
You just got derailed again.
His only purpose, ladies and gentlemen, he's here all night because he won't.
I want to point out, totally on subject,
Mm.
that we have an IKEA here in Indianapolis, and it's so annoying to go to.
I've been to it actually.
Oh, hey,
Yeah,
congratulations!
time ago.
It's relatively new.
I went there for lunch.
It's so annoying to go to that I this week ordered replacement bins for one of their cube monstrosities
Yeah.
where I keep all my kids' toys,
Mhm.
and I just had them shipped to me. It would have cost me like $20 less to go to the IKEA, and I was like, "Fuck that," because going there sucks.
But you don't want to have the Flugs and Fjords, furniture.
No,
You'd
I
have
could've-
dropped another 300 had you gone too.
Well, that's true. Yeah, but I could have gotten some
That's IKEA
Swedish
furniture is not
meatballs.
that expensive. But yeah, the
No, it's
meatballs
not.
are delicious.
No, he would have had a whole nother house. Like, oh,
This is an excellent sidetrack that
I love it because we were talking about missiles and death and war, and now we're talking about deliver me from Swedish furniture. Fight Club references. So here we are. Here's the jokes. Laugh
I
it up.
almost got the collection.
Laugh it up, Chuckles. Do we have any closing thoughts at this point? Because I think it's probably a good time to wrap. Drew, you don't get one. Chris, do you want to go?
Yeah, is it possible for America to blast the fuck out of Iran and then it just end after we annihilate them, and Russia and the big players not just kind of stay put on the sideline? Is that even a possibility?
Richard, you speak to that. Yes.
No, if we started doing that to Iran, China and Russia would just assume they're next, and they would do their thing. Now, if we were to reach out to China and Russia and agree to do it all together, maybe. But again, that would be everything that was you think about Holocaust and all the atrocities throughout history. We would now be that forever. There's probably nothing that any other nation after us could do that would equate to that for the rest of the world. Future humans would learn about us when they talked about atrocity.
What if we only let gay people launch the missiles, Richard?
that changes everything.
That's a good answer. Very good answer. I like that.
What did you say? I heard my.
He said it changes. It would change everything.
Oh,
Somewhat facetiously, but yes. I mean, I have to agree with Richard there because, if you're talking about turning a country to glass kind of thing, I don't know. There's an awful lot of people there just trying to live their lives that didn't really want to have shit to do with any of this, and we're okay just turning brown children into skeletons again. We would be the bad guys that future generations talk about. We're already the bad guys half of the it's it would be going whole hog on it. So I definitely agree with Richard there. And also, another thing that you had pointed out earlier is like, it wouldn't be like if they knew they were going out, they would probably do the same thing to Israel on their way, right?
Right.
And a bunch of other targets around because they've got a lot of ordnance to deploy. So that doesn't sound like a thing we want to do. That would be a bad timeline.
Yeah, that would be bad of us forever and ever and ever. Other alien planets watching us might come and destroy the planet if they saw us doing that.
This is why aliens put things up our ass. Yeah, Haley, thank you for joining us. We're actually just sort of in the process of wrapping up here, but glad to have you with us, Haley. Maybe we can chat after we go offline a little bit.
Yeah, Haley, if you could just wrap up everything that we talked about so far. Thank you.
I want your closing thoughts, Haley, right now.
On IKEA.
We talked about IKEA. You missed it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
All about that
It's
sweet.
Drew's fucking fault. He's been typing in his little corner where I've had to hide from it the whole time.
I was
I
derailing
got
you
in a weird
repeatedly.
YouTube video jump, and then I was like, an hour has passed. Anyway.
No, it was derailing David repeatedly into different topics on purpose.
I'm a little wine drunk right now.
Drew,
Also
you're like a more human Mike S, but not that different. Not that different, really.
Oh, that's fighting words
Did I
right
cut you
there.
deep there?
I will end you.
You will try. Anyway,
I'd love
back
to hear a wrap up of the conversation, though.
Sort of the quick rundown is I think all of us in the room are adults. Well, we understand this guy was a bad dude. We're talking about Soleimani. There was always a good reason to get rid of him. We always want him to go away. It was never strategically wise to do so, but now it's happened. And now we're dealing with basically Trump being the decider here in responding to what Iran has decided to do in response to that, and whether or not he can view it intelligently and find a way that doesn't lead us to war, but sort of vote of no confidence in his ability to do that, and we're gonna
he's
enjoy our
suffering
Swedish
from a
furniture
credibility
and
gap.
meatballs. While in our remaining moment, not our remaining moments, because Iran doesn't have that kind of capability, but like this could cause to a lot of unrest in the region. The possibly pulling out of our troops. We've had this attack now on where our troops were stationed in Iraq, or the Iraqi government has voted to remove that we were supposed to leave now, and now we're saying we won't leave because we're in the third grade. Like, it's none of it is good, and we don't really know necessarily where it's going, and we're just gonna cross our fingers and see what kind of stupidity unfolds in the next few days, essentially, because Iran is a little bit crazy, and they're okay to go down with the ship. The government is. But we don't want to be, and provided they don't do anything particularly stupid that bloodies our collective nose, there won't be much political will for a war. Everyone has the support of Congress. Go ahead, Richard.
One thing I wanted to mention was that back in 2003, it's like everybody wanted to go to war. Everybody was still reeling from 9/11, and we had this naive thought, and so I served in Iraq, so I can badmouth me for thinking this way. I thought, this is going to change everything. I was in the Marines at the time, and I wanted to stay then because of 9/11, and I wanted to get involved, and I thought that would make a difference. And I thought we would save Iran and make them a democracy and all that. So I was very naive. But there was just a lot of people who thought that. And the idea of us not going to war was a minority. And now that's switched. And a lot of these families that lost kids over in Iraq and Afghanistan, they're diehard Republicans, but not to go to war. One of the main reasons they voted for Trump was his idea of getting us out of there. So if he starts trying to call for a war machine, they're going to back out. As much as they seem to stay with him no matter what, I think this will bring them out because they've lost kids over there. So they don't want to send the next generation of kids back over to get involved in all this. So we're not going to have that same diehard willingness to march off to our deaths like we did back in 2003. That's all.
Yeah, that's. I think it's a good point. The only people I've seen play Chicken Hawk are the ones who probably never had any skin in the game and never
Right.
will.
Exactly.
It's those people. And you see this joke, and I'll touch on this just briefly to get into, I guess, a sidebar on the, well, you like this idea so much, I guess you're going to go down to your recruiting office tomorrow kind of thing. That's like, if you're okay with Syrian refugees, how many are you adopting into your home? That's a shitty thing to say. Like, that's a stupid argument. Don't do that. But that aside, because I see a lot of people on the left doing it, hearing me attacking the left. Don't do that. That aside, you're right. I think the isolationist appeal is a strong one in the Republican base at this point. It's one of the reasons why, like Tulsi was so popular with, libertarians, and why Trump was saying he was getting, which is not true at all, that he was getting people out of, our people out of Syria. That this was a good thing ultimately, and leave the Kurds to their own fate, kind of thing, with the Turks and so on and so forth. Even though that's not what really happened, we know.
I think it's a little more basic than that. Only in that southern states generally have a bit more skin in the game, so to speak, when it comes to just like population set of people who join the army. The army volunteer people who sign up are majority southern, I believe.
Midwest as well, if not tied, probably.
So they have more skin in the game.
I wonder what the demographics are. I've never really looked into that.
I just know that I know a
know
lot
if
of
it's true.
people who did military, but I know a lot of people who aren't from the South, and it just seems as if it's kind of disproportionate. Anecdotal, but I believe it.
I was raised in Georgia, and I joined in Georgia, so that.
There you go. You're a walking stereotype, Richard.
There we go. Proving my anecdote.
Richard, I didn't know you were from Georgia, Richard.
I was born and raised in Georgia, but and I traveled the world
Illinois that were the
time and now out here in Arizona. So, those are my roots, but I've been around since then.
What
No,
part of
but
Georgia?
I think that there's the point in that, like, I think that it's fair to say that there's a general sentiment of being against like perpetual war, and also, if you're leaning on trying to understand the conservative mindset, I would say that it seems to me that the army tends to pool from more southern-based states, and Southerners in general have more skin in the game when it comes to international conflict that could put people's lives at risk, soldiers' lives at risk, which they're volunteering to be.
I would say the military really enjoys this mindset of doing what you're told no matter what, and that there's some nobility in that. And I think that resonates with more people in the South and the Midwest than it will with people in the Northeast. I'll say that.
I hear you. Yeah. It is really funny because you were talking about after 9/11 and you wanted to stay and stuff like that. And that's, when there was sort of like a maximal political will to go fight and go get the bad guys back, right? Like I was ready. I went down to recruiter's office, and again, anecdotally, and my mother freaked out, and she got a hold of the recruiter and made him sort of let me go, even though I had already signed certain documents that I was pretty much in it, and she somehow got me out of that. I don't know if that was a good decision now or not. I'll never know, but I guess we're the path not taken kind of thing. But yeah, that was absolutely true at the time, and I can only imagine it would be more so in southern states where I see more of the rah patriotism than I did as growing up as an East Coast elitist type person. Even if I felt it there, I mean, I can only imagine what it was like in Georgia, or
Right.
or Texas or Louisiana, kind of thing. So.
And I've been to towns in New York that are identical to Georgia. So actually, when I say Northeast, I mean cities. High population cities in the Northeast are completely different than rural areas. So there's towns in New York where I would have thought I was in Georgia, and then kind of towns that do what you're told because you're told by an authority, that really resonates with them.
That's interesting. And you know what? I should pick up on that more because there's a joke about Pennsylvania because I'm from there originally. I'm from Pittsburgh, but they say on one side you've got Philadelphia, on the other side you have Pittsburgh, and in the middle you have Alabama.
Yes.
That because if you go anywhere in rural Pennsylvania, you're just
David, that's Pennsylvania.
oh, Pennsylvania, yeah.
That's true. It is. I can attest to it. I've partied with those crazy rednecks outside of Harrisburg.
Oh yeah, sure.
Stones
sure.
and glass houses, sir.
And what is it? I can't think of the name. It's not. You don't pronounce it Lancaster.
Lancaster.
It's like Lancaster or something like that. If
Amish
you're from
country.
there. Yeah. But anyway, further derailments. Drew, that one wasn't on you, so you can't take credit. So fuck off.
I will always take credit.
Where do we want to go from here, guys?
So, David, can you tell me more about your area, like in Tennessee? I've been thinking about visiting.
It's almost as shitty as New Orleans. There you go.
That's fine. I don't live in New Orleans.
Oh, well, you live like just outside or something?
Well, I mean, I guess I live on the North Shore. I live away from those sorts.
Sounds lovely. Haley, say something. I know, Haley. I'm sorry.
I really shouldn't say what I'm thinking right now.
Can you tell me more? Can you tell me more about your that whiskey you're drinking? Have you tried the?
You know what I need to try?
Whiskey?
Do I have the ability to mute you from here? Like, can I mute you for you? Like,
O'Reilly would say,
I don't. This is good to know because I don't think I can actually do it in this kind of control center thingy.
It's just when adults swim.
This is. I mean, it's just gotten so bad now. Thank you.
What was that video that you sent that was like an ad? That RJ, you sent the Adult Swim video that was like an ad.
Oh yeah. You don't want to talk about that. That's really messed up.
I just started thinking about that. All right, sorry. Never mind.
Okay,
it's called Video of a Bear.
Video of a bear. Okay. Not familiar.
Don't look it up.
Okay. Is it like a 2 girls 1 cup kind of thing, but Adult Swim?
It's upsetting.
Okay. I'm not gonna look it up. I'm not that curious. I've seen enough horrible shit. I'm just not curious anymore.
To everybody watching on YouTube, I'll put it down in the comments.
Okay, do that. Yes, put it in the comments. I'll add it to the show notes. Anyway, so we were doing closing comments like 20 minutes ago, and we got to Chris's. Drew, you don't get any. Haley, you just showed up. RJ, do you have any sort of closing comments to this thing?
Yeah, actually,
check out Video of a Bear.
I do.
Okay.
So what you want to do is check out Video of a Bear. It'll fuck you up.
Oh my god. What just happened?
So my actual closing comments are my opening comments, which are the fact that Trump chose the hyperbolic option, which was not actually an option presented to him by the Pentagon / generals, is really concerning. Tonight, we don't know where we are. In fact, I would bet most of us haven't checked for about an hour exactly what has happened.
I've been checking.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Other than Richard, I'm going to give Richard wide berth on this, and I really appreciate Richard's insight tonight. But we don't know where this is going because this was never supposed to happen. It's sort of it's like if you picked a random number and the random number came up and you were like, oh, we have to kill somebody in our family. Like, we don't know where this is going. So I just hope that cooler heads prevail, that the Pentagon, that generals are able to bring this back, and are able to say, this is not something that is worth plunging us into possibly World War III, which honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. But a hot shooting war in the Middle East, I don't think is worth it. So I just think it's surprising that no one gave Trump better advice when he chose the one option that was presented to him, specifically to show that all of the other options were better. That's all.
Yeah, very good. Richard?
I enjoyed the hour that we spent making fun of James, and we said as soon as Haley gets on, we're going to stop talking about him. Oh, that's right. I'm so sorry. How embarrassing.
Uh,
No, I don't have anything except God help us. And I don't believe in God, but
yeah.
anyway.
I think that's a meta statement then. Maybe we need God's help, and maybe He doesn't exist. So here we are, just kind of hosed.
Yep.
That's more or less how I feel about it. That we're kind of hosed in this situation. There's no more adults in the room, like I've said before, and Trump's just kind of free to figure out whatever he thinks is going to be the most advantageous thing for him to do and the most face-saving thing for him to do. But he's an immature narcissist, and that could get people killed. It was when I also mentioned earlier the thing about Syria and sort of serving up the Kurds to the Turks, that to my mind is much horrible shit that he's said and done and offended people and have kind of rolled back rights for the LGBT, other marginalized communities, what have you. Like, when that happened, to my mind, that was the worst thing that he had done in his presidency, was let these Kurds get slaughtered by the as I said, the invading Turks. And now this. Could he lead us to war? How many Americans could die if that happens? I said in 2016, a ham sandwich would be a better president. A ham sandwich wouldn't lead us to fucking war. And here we are with something that is worse than having a ham sandwich as a president. And it's making decisions that could affect the lives of other people. And so here we are. I can only be happy that we don't seem to have the political will to go to war, really. There's not much confidence in his leadership, especially as commander-in-chief, as I understand it. And I can only hope it's his awareness of that he would not really have much support in a war with Iran that will keep us out of war, because that may be the only thing. And that's where I'm at with it. And by the way, Drew, I'm drinking Whistle Pig's Piggyback Rye. You asked earlier to derail me. You were not successful that time, but that's what I'm drinking.
I technically was, because you started looking at it, and then we're like,
I was trying to decide if I wanted to drink more.
Oh, note.
Yes.
This just came out. Iran has said that its retaliation was its entire plan, and that it doesn't intend to do anything else. Trump is supposed to speak tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it'll be really
Speak
nice.
versus tweet. Okay.
delightful.
It'll be.
And then things got worse.
Why do I have it?
Oh, that is masterful, Haley. That was wonderful.
I feel like that's a reference to the thing you were talking about.
Yeah, maybe. It's a stupid joke.
Hopefully someone will just leave his microphone switched off, and no one will hear him, and he'll just for a while, and then we'll be done.
How will it be like, David?
You can watch this again if you want to know what it was like. That's what you can do. But
I hope this was as entertaining for me as it was for you.
Oh God, I hate you, Drew. You're just the worst, except for James. I had to let it sit just for a beat. But but James is the worst. Drew's a close second. And I think it's a good time to wrap this all up at this point.
Wait, Haley was going to say something, but she wasn't drunk enough yet. Have you had a few more
I
drinks?
thought you were wine drunk, Haley. Did you have your closing comments, or I kind of?
I jumped in way too late to have like an.
You said there was something you wanted
Just
to
go free form on this
My
one.
God, that was like 5 insults ago. I don't remember when
Free-
I was thinking 5 insults.
You know what?
Ago.
We can do the insults in the after show. It'll be fine.
Exactly.
It'll be
Haley
fine.
Bloomberg does.
She did.
I'll do it.
She showed up at the end with her bags of wine.
Oh,
and,
God damn it.
And just forced her way onto the debate stage. That's what Haley did. But
I'm Marianne Williamson.
are you coming at us with cosmic darkness?
I have my crystals.
Oh, gosh.
They give me power. Anyway, I'm sorry. Close out.
Yeah. I am going to close out. Want to give a shout out to Mr. Ross Janes at janesmedia.com. He is our digital wizard, makes all of this stuff work. If you're watching this, you're either on Facebook or YouTube already, but we have a channel, page, and group for Many Opinions. We're also on the web for manyopinions.com. We are also a podcast, so check us out on iTunes, Beyond Pod, or wherever else you get your podcast listening on. I want to thank everybody who came out except for Drew. And that said, I'm David Popeiden, and this has been For Many Opinions Hangout. We'll see y'all next time.